I'm cooking for another man tonight. Nico Bellandi walked out of a truce meeting before his chef finished the sentence. By the time he reached the kitchen, every knife had stopped moving, except Celeste Harper's. For 7 years, she had left one covered plate for him after midnight and kept his estate running while his brother called her the cook. Nico thought he had come downstairs because he was jealous. Then Celeste placed a black wax seal beside his hand. The lion's tail curved the wrong way. That mold had been destroyed under his brother's signature. In 2 hours, a rival matriarch would eat from a tray marked by the same seal. 23 workers would take the blame, and the only woman who could prove it had a car waiting to take her to a better life. 20 minutes earlier, Nico Bellandi had been seated between two families who had spent 15 years waiting for one another to blink. The Ventresca delegation occupied the east side of the long council table. Bellandi captains sat on the west. Nico had not raised his voice once. Then the kitchen extension lit on the console beside him. Celeste Harper did not call the council room unless a delay threatened service. An allergy had changed, or someone had ignored an instruction important enough to endanger the whole evening. Nico answered with one hand still resting on the treaty draft. "I need approval to leave at 6, she said. His attention sharpened. "Why I'm cooking for another man tonight." The room went silent before anyone understood why Nico had stopped breathing. Sofia Ventresca looked over the rim of her glasses. Lucasera lowered his pen. Lorenzo Bellandi, Nico's younger brother and head of procurement, hid a smile. Nico rose. "We are not finished," one of the attorneys said. "We are now." He walked out before Celeste could explain. By the time he entered the main kitchen, every knife had stopped moving, except hers. The staff had learned that when Nico Bellandi entered during service, someone had made a serious mistake. Celeste kept slicing fennel. She was 45, full-figured, steady on her feet, and entirely unimpressed by men who expected a room to rearrange itself around them. Her white chef's blouse was buttoned to the throat. A black apron crossed her waist. Her dark hair was twisted into a practical knot, and the knife in her hand moved with the calm rhythm of a metronome. "Say that again," Nico said. "I'm cooking for another man tonight." A young prep cook nearly dropped a bowl. Celeste set down the knife. "Adrian Valle, Halcyon Grand, 7 o'clock. It's a private tasting and final interview. You are interviewing for another job. I have been interviewing for 3 weeks. You did not tell me. I sent the request through procurement 10 days ago." Lorenzo entered behind Nico, carrying a blue binder. "She did. I approved the evening." Nico looked at his brother. "You approved her leaving before the truce dinner. Elena is covering service." Celeste built a schedule detailed enough to survive without her for 3 hours. Celeste met Nico's eyes. That was the idea. The phrase cut more deeply than it should have. 7 years earlier, Celeste had been hired to cook for 6 members of the Bellandi family. The estate now held offices, guest suites, a rotating security staff, and enough political meetings to feed a small hotel. Her title had never changed. Neither had her habit of leaving one covered plate beneath a silver dome whenever Nico worked past midnight. The first time, he assumed it was leftover service. The second time, he found a note beneath the napkin. "Eat before 1:30. The sauce will split at 2 that morning." After a harbor dispute, he had found veal, potatoes, and coffee under the dome. Celeste had already gone home. He had eaten standing at the island. Now another man had offered her a table in Chicago, a title Nico had never thought to give, and enough respect to make her leave before the most important dinner of the year. What position, he asked. Executive Culinary Operations Director. You cook? Celeste's expression cooled. I also hire the banquet staff. Approve food vendors. Manage kitchen payroll. Write allergy plans. Schedule deliveries. And decide which civilian workers can reach the private wing. Luca, who had followed Nico down, looked toward the service board, covering one wall. Names, times, meal codes, entrants, and guard rotations were arranged in Celeste's handwriting. Nico had seen that board every day. He had never read it as power. A temporary cook reached for the long carving knife beside Celeste's station. Put that down, Nico said. The man froze. That one is hers. Celeste glanced at him. The knife had been a gift from her father. She let no one use it. A rule Nico had noticed years ago and never mentioned. The moment passed. Lorenzo set the blue binder on the island. Celeste's banquet system filled every page. Her name had been removed from the cover and replaced by Procurement Service Plan. Nico touched the empty corner where a label had been peeled away. Who wrote this? I did, Celeste said. Lorenzo answered at the same time. My department assembled it. Celeste said nothing. She did not have to. Elena Ruiz approached, carrying a small evidence tray. Celeste. The saffron delivery. A wooden crate rested on a steel cart. Black wax closed the cord around it. The Bellandi lion was stamped into the surface. Its tail curved left. Celeste placed the seal beneath the kitchen lamp. The current mold curves right. This is the old impression. Lorenzo's easy expression did not change. Freeze the crate. Give Celeste whatever records she needs. Celeste looked at him, almost surprised. He opened the binder. Her memory has saved us from bad vendors before. The compliment sounded genuine. That made Nico uneasy for reasons he could not name. The old mold was destroyed 6 months ago. Celeste said, You signed the certificate. I signed what the foundry confirmed. Then someone copied a seal. No active supplier should know existed. Nico lifted the crate invoice. Who delivered it? Marrow Catering, Elena said. Celeste shook her head. Marrow never delivered to this estate. Lorenzo turned a page. They were added as overflow support last winter. They were paid 11 times. Celeste said, Not one of their trucks ever touched my counter. That sentence quieted the room more effectively than any alarm. Nico looked at the crate again. Open it. No. His gaze moved to Celeste. If the shipment is a test, opening it tells whoever sent it that we found the right thing. Photograph the seal. Isolate the crate. And pull every delivery made under Marrow's name. Lorenzo nodded. Agreed. Nico should have felt reassured by his brother's cooperation. Instead, he noticed Lorenzo's eyes move past the crate toward the locked cabinet, holding emergency meals for the Ventresca matriarch. No one had mentioned that cabinet. Celeste noticed too. Lorenzo looked back at them. What nothing? Celeste said, but her hand closed around the evidence tray. At the service entrance, a warning tone sounded. One temporary catering credential had just opened a door. No outside worker was supposed to know existed. Gabriel Foss, head of estate security, locked the service door from the operations room before the credential could open a second entrance. Name, Nico asked. Paul Mercer. Temporary banquet. Utility. Celeste crossed to the wallboard. There is no Paul Mercer on my approved staff. Lorenzo opened the procurement file. He was added after midnight. Marrow sponsored him. Who checked him? My office requested the credential. Security issued it. Gabriel's face hardened. The background number is blank. Then we have a careless assistant. Lorenzo said, suspend Mercer and every Marrow credential. Again. He gave Celeste exactly what she requested. Again. The answer arrived too easily. Nico watched Celeste move through the kitchen. She did not rush. She reassigned the south entrance, placed 2 workers at receiving, and changed the route for every remaining delivery. Within 4 minutes, service continued as though the alarm had never sounded. Who taught her to do this? Nico asked quietly. Luca stood beside him. Nobody. She learned because every department sent its problems downstairs. At 1:30, Celeste spread the Marrow records across the pastry station. 11 payments. No delivery signatures. No temperature checks. No damaged box reports. No names from anyone who had physically handled a shipment. They collected 11 payments. She said, not one box from them ever reached my kitchen. Nico read the totals. Each payment was small enough to avoid council review. Together, they could fund false uniforms, vehicles, and credentials for months. Lorenzo pointed to a signature. This approval came from one of my assistants. Which one, I'll find out. Before or after the records become cleaner? Celeste asked. His eyes cooled for a fraction of a second. You have every right to be angry about your title. Do not turn that anger into an accusation. I'm angry about a dead company walking through our door. A server called Celeste to taste the broth. She corrected the salt without looking at a recipe, then returned to the records. Nico had watched her cook for years and assumed the kitchen was where her authority ended. Now he saw guards asking her which entrance to hold, accountants bringing her payment sheets, and supervisors waiting for her decision before moving a single cart. At 2, Adrian Vale called the estate. His voice was calm and unthreatened by Nico's name. Ms. Harper is scheduled for a private tasting at the Halcyon Grand's local property at 7. The Chicago position is hers if the final menu reflects the operating plan she submitted. What operating plan? A supply model connecting vendors. Labor, Alleghis, and security. 3 of our hotels have tried to reproduce it. Nico looked through the office glass toward Celeste. She submitted work created inside my estate. She submitted a system carrying her name. If you believe your family owns it, send counsel. If you believe she built it, let her decide where to use it. Nico disliked him immediately. That did not make Adrian wrong. The hotel car arrives at 6. Adrian continued. She has a suite for the night and an 8:15 flight to Chicago tomorrow. No decision is required until noon. A complete exit. Not a threat. Not a fantasy. Not another man trying to impress her over dinner. A future. After the call, Luca said, still worried he is dangerous. Yes. In what way he recognizes her? Luca's expression softened with something close to pity. That is not his danger. That is your delay. In the kitchen, Celeste checked the time on her phone. The tasting car is confirmed. Nico approached her station. You can postpone. I can. I won't. We have an active breach. You have security, procurement, and a full council upstairs. We have one person who recognized the seal. And for once, everyone knows where to find me if they need me. You are leaving with the proof. The crate remains sealed. I keep the seal in my custody until both families witness it. Lorenzo joined them. I can hold it for procurement. Celeste slid the evidence sleeve into the inner pocket of her jacket. No. His smile stayed in place. Of course. Nico heard the restraint in her answer. She no longer trusted his brother. But she did not yet have enough to say why. At 3:15, the first Ventresca advance team arrived. Celeste personally checked the matriarch's meal plan. No shellfish contact. No shared oil. No unverified garnish. 4 emergency trays were sealed and placed in the private pantry. Lorenzo entered while Elena was locking the cabinet. You moved them from the lower shelf, he said. Celeste looked up. How did you know where they were? He glanced at the cabinet. They have always been stored there. No. We changed the location after the winter renovation. He recovered quickly. Then I saw it in your banquet plan. The plan lists a protected pantry, not a shelf. Nico watched the first true crack appear in Lorenzo's composure. A phone rang in the corridor. Gabriel answered, listened, and returned. Marrow's registered address is a pharmacy. He said, it has been for 8 years. Celeste nodded once. The company exists only on paper. Someone paid a dead company, copied its name, and walked through our door. Luca said. The simple sentence stripped away every excuse. Lorenzo closed the binder. Then we find who used my department. Celeste studied him. We will. At 4:20, the kitchen lights flickered. The private pantry alarm sounded once, then stopped. Gabriel checked the panel. Mercer's credential just opened the pantry. That credential was suspended. Nico said. It was. Gabriel answered. Someone turned it back on. Celeste was already moving. Nico followed. The pantry door stood open by 2 inches. White cornstarch dust marked the threshold. A signal Celeste used on protected trays so staff could identify them in low light. The cabinet inside was empty. All 4 emergency meals were gone. Lorenzo arrived behind them and looked immediately toward the lower silver cabinet. Celeste saw it. This time, so did Nico. Nobody touches the pantry. Celeste said. Gabriel sealed the corridor. Elena counted the regular meals while 2 Ventresca witnesses stood at the far end. Already suspicious. 22 standard plates. Elena said. The 4 protected trays are missing. Lorenzo folded his arms. Then Mercer took them. Mercer may not exist. Celeste replied. His name opened the door. That does not mean a person did. Nico looked at the access panel. Can you tell where the credential went next? Gabriel checked. Elevator 3. That elevator has been locked since Monday, Celeste said. Then the record was edited. The truce dinner was less than 4 hours away. If the Ventrescas learned that meals prepared for their matriarch had vanished, they could walk before anyone sat down. Nico lowered his voice. Can you replace them? Yes. But that may be the point. Someone wants us rebuilding in a hurry, while the missing trays come back through another route. Lorenzo looked toward the lower silver cabinet again. Check there. Celeste turned to him. Why? Because it connects to the silver room. No, it does not. His eyes narrowed. The old cabinet connected before the renovation. She said. The line was removed in January. Lorenzo glanced at Nico. I remembered the old layout. You just claimed you read the new plan. For the first time, his polished calm slipped. Are we solving a threat, or testing my memory? Both may matter. Gabriel found a maintenance request on the silver room. It had been submitted at 2:16 that morning under Celeste's name, and scheduled the room to remain closed until 7. I did not sign that, she said. The old instinct rose in Nico before he could stop it. Trust the official record. Isolate the person named. Protect the family first. Celeste saw the hesitation. You asked who I was cooking for, she said. Now, ask the question that matters. Nico held her gaze. Did you authorize the closure? No. He turned to Gabriel. Then her name was forged. Lorenzo's expression changed. By less than a breath. It was enough. Gabriel opened the request history. The order came from the procurement conference room. Anyone can enter that room, Lorenzo said. After midnight, Celeste asked. Nico looked at Gabriel. One physical key opened it. Gabriel said, Lorenzo's. My assistant borrowed it yesterday. Which assistant, Luca asked. Lorenzo did not answer quickly enough. Celeste took the printed request. The person who forged this used 1900. So I never use military time in kitchen schedules. Temporary workers misread it. Every request I write says 7 p.m. It was not dramatic evidence. It was the kind of detail men overlooked because it came from repetition, a beat, and responsibility. Lorenzo gave a tired laugh. You are building betrayal from how a clock is written. No, Celeste said. I am proving someone copied my name without knowing my work. Nico looked toward the silver room at the end of the corridor. Open it. Not yet, Celeste said. There may be altered meals inside. And the Ventresca advance team is watching armed Bellandi men gather around a closed service room. Open it now, and the treaty ends before we know what we are showing them. What do you need? The question stopped everyone. For 7 years, Nico had told Celeste what to do. He had never asked what she needed. 2 witnesses. 1 from each family. No one from procurement. The original seal stays with me, and I decide when that door opens. Granted. Lorenzo stared at his brother. You are placing a cook above blood. Nico's voice went cold. I am placing the person who found the breach above the department that missed it. Celeste did not thank him. Recognition was not a gift. It was a correction. At 5:20. The hotel car called from the front gate. Nico's attention moved to her phone. You still have time to leave, he said. Lorenzo looked between them. You would let the only person who understands this walk out. The choice is hers. Celeste studied Nico as though deciding whether he meant it. She removed her apron and handed Elena the replacement menu. Rebuild the protected meals from sealed ingredients. Do not let anyone move them without 2 signatures. Then she faced Gabriel. Hold the silver room. Keep Lorenzo away from the vendor files. Call me if anyone asks staff to sign statements. Lorenzo smiled, running away. No. Choosing work that saw me before it needed me. Nico's jaw tightened. But he did not block the corridor. Celeste passed him, then stopped. The black seal stays with me. He nodded. No guard follows the car. Another pause. Agreed. She left. Every instinct in Nico demanded that he send someone after her. Inspect Adrian's hotel, and place a car outside the suite. He did none of those things. At 6:12, the Halcyon sedan passed through the gates. At 6:20, Nico entered the kitchen and found the staff changing over for dinner service. The island was clean. The silver dome that had covered his last plate for 7 years sat upside down on a drying rack. There was nothing beneath it. The absence landed with more force than jealousy. He had thought Celeste's care was part of the house, a quiet service that would renew itself no matter how little attention he paid. Now the kitchen continued without her, but it no longer felt certain. Luca found him staring at the empty counter. "You let her go," he said. "She was free to leave." "That is not what I asked." Nico looked toward the doors she had used. "I wanted to stop the car." "But you didn't." "No." "Why?" "Because if I kept her here to save us, I would prove every reason she had to leave." At 6:55, Celeste entered the private dining room of the Halcyon Grand. Adrian Vale stood beside a small tasting table. Not a romantic setting, but a professional one. 3 executives waited with notebooks. Her proposed operating plan was printed with her name on the cover. No one called her the cook. She prepared the final dish, explained how local suppliers, staff schedules, allergy controls, and receiving checks protected both guests and workers. Then placed the plate before Adrian. He tasted it and closed the folder. "The position is yours." Celeste looked through the hotel windows toward the city. A suite waited upstairs. A flight left at 8:15 the next morning. She could sign, sleep, and begin a life where authority arrived before disaster. Her phone remained silent. Nico had kept his word. Then Eleanor called. Celeste answered on the first ring. "They locked us in the service hall," Elena said. Her voice shook with anger, not fear. "Lorenzo's attorney has 23 statements on the table. He says we either sign responsibility for the missing trays or lose our jobs before dinner." Celeste looked at Adrian. He heard enough to understand. "Put me on speaker." Noise filled the line cards. Low arguments. Someone crying near the dish station. "Do not sign anything," Celeste said. "Ask for copies. Write down every person in the room. If they remove you, leave together and wait at the north gate." Lorenzo's voice came through the background. "Ms. Harper no longer works here." Celeste's grip tightened around the phone. "Then why are you using my staff to hide your mistake?" A chair scraped. Lorenzo took the call. "You made your choice," he said. "Enjoy Chicago. You forged my name and opened a dead vendor, an accusation from an employee who abandoned service. I left after building coverage for every task. You left because another man offered you more." "No, I left because he understood what the work was." His tone softened. "The suite is waiting. The flight is paid. Keep going. Celeste, you were never meant for rooms where blood decides the vote." The cruelty was wrapped in advice. That was how men like Lorenzo preserved themselves. They called exclusion natural, then offered safety to anyone willing to accept it. "Neither were you," she said. "Or you would not need kitchen workers to carry your blame." She ended the call. Adrian did not reach for the contract. "Did Nico order you back?" "No." "Did he ask no?" "Then why are you going?" Celeste looked at the cover, bearing her own name. For years, she had imagined freedom as distance from the Bellandi estate. Now it was real enough to sign. But Elena, Marcus, Daniel, and 20 others had no hotel suite. They had rent, children, medicine, and years of work Lorenzo expected to turn into silence. Because the people who carried that house are being made to pay for a Bellandi man's betrayal. Adrian closed the contract and handed it to her. The offer remains open until noon tomorrow. She stood. Thank you. Do not thank me for giving you time to make your own decision. That sentence made the choice even clearer. At 7:24, the halcyon car turned back toward the estate. The truce dinner had begun without food. Nico sat across from Sofia Ventresca beneath the main chandelier. The old woman's place remained empty, while her daughter reviewed the security delay. Your brother says your chef compromised service. Sofia said, My brother is wrong. He says civilian staff refused to cooperate. They refused to sign confessions for something they did not do. Lorenzo stood near the doors with his attorney. We have 4 missing meals, a false credential under Celeste's name, and a staff walkout. The responsible action is to place service access under emergency control until the treaty is complete. There it was. Create the crisis. Blame the kitchen. Ask for every door. Nico looked at Lorenzo as if seeing the structure behind his face for the first time. You prepared that solution quickly, he said. I prepared for failure. No. You prepared the failure. Sofia Rose. If your family intends to prosecute itself during my mother's dinner, we leave. The doors opened. Celeste entered, wearing a fitted plum jacket over her white chef's blouse. Elena and the other workers followed behind her. Not in uniformed lines, but together. Lorenzo stepped into her path. This is a private council. Celeste held up the evidence sleeve. The black wax seal remained attached to the false saffron crate cord, preserved exactly as she found it. Then explain privately why a dead vendor entered this estate under a mold you signed out of existence. Sofia stopped. Nico did not move toward Celeste. He did not claim he had known she would return. He asked, What do you need? 20 minutes. Witnesses from both families. The silver room opened under joint custody. Every staff statement sealed and removed from Lorenzo's attorney. Done. Lorenzo laughed. She walked away from her post. She was free to. And now she returns to give orders. Celeste placed the halcyon contract on the table. I had a real job. A private suite. And a flight out tomorrow morning. I came back because 23 people were being forced to confess to a breach. Procurement created. Sofia examined the contract. You could still leave. Yes. Why did you not? Because safety bought with someone else's ruin is not freedom. The room went quiet. Lorenzo turned to Nico. Remove her. Nico stood. But he remained beside the table. Not in front of Celeste. She built the system you are discussing. He said, You will hear her. Sofia named her eldest son as the Ventresca witness. Nico shows Luca. Elena joined Celeste. Gabriel led them to the silver room while both families followed at a distance. The first lock opened under Bellandi authority. Sofia's son opened the second. Elena broke the evidence tape. 4 silver-domed trays waited inside. Beside them, a ledger burned in a metal waste bin. Celeste pulled a fire blanket from the wall and covered the flames. Smoke rolled against the ceiling. Gabriel dragged the bin into the corridor, while the witnesses watched the fire die. The outer pages were black. The center survived. Lorenzo reached the doorway a second later. His eyes went first to the ledger. Not the missing meals. Not the smoke. The ledger. Celeste saw the fear before he buried it. You cannot use burned records as evidence. His attorney said, I do not need them to prove the shipment was false. Celeste replied, She raised the seal. This does. The black wax caught the corridor light. The Bellandi lion's tail curved left. One mold made every false seal. She said, and Lorenzo was the only man who signed that mold out of existence. Lorenzo's face hardened. That is a story. No, Celeste said. The story is what you told everyone about the cook. Now we go back to the table, and I show them what the work actually proves. The scorched ledger returned to the dining room under joint guard. Celeste placed the false saffron crate at the center of the table. Its reverse tail seal, still tied to the cord. Lorenzo stood beside his attorney. This shipment arrived under Marrow Catering. She said, Marrow collected 11 payments from the Bellandi estate. Not one of its trucks ever reached my kitchen. A Bellandi councilman opened the payment pages. There could be missing receiving forms. No. Real food leaves traces. A driver signs in. A worker checks the temperature. Someone notes a torn box. A late arrival, or a change in weight. Marrow was paid 11 times and delivered nothing. Sophia looked at Lorenzo. Then what did the payments buy? False uniforms, temporary names, doors that opened for people who never worked here. Lorenzo's attorney rose. That is inference. The wax is not. Celeste lifted the crate cord so everyone could see the black seal. 6 months ago. I changed the Bellandi lion because the old mold left the tail facing left. The new tail faces right. Lorenzo signed a certificate saying the old mold had been melted at the East Foundry on February 3rd. She slid a simple work notice across the table. The foundry had no power that week. I know because my kitchen fed the repair crew. Its furnace could not have destroyed anything. A Ventresca captain examined the notice. So the certificate was false. Yes, the mold survived. The same old impression closed this crate. Anyone in procurement could have used it. Lorenzo said, only one person signed the mold out of existence. Only one person controlled the cabinet where retired seals were stored, and only one department paid the dead vendor that carried it through our gate. Lorenzo looked toward Nico. You are allowing an employee to accuse your brother based on wax. Nico's face did not change. She is explaining. You are failing to answer. Celeste opened the surviving center of the ledger. 3 vendor names appeared again and again. Marrow Catering, North Star Produce, Vale Refrigeration. These companies were paid just below the amount that required council review. Tomorrow morning. The new truce rules would place Bellandi and Ventresca suppliers under a joint audit. The companies would be checked. They would disappear. Sophia understood first. So tonight had to destroy the truce. Yes, a medical emergency at this table would have done it. Her eldest son moved toward the sealed trays. Celeste raised one hand. Your grandmother is safe. Those meals have not been served. And no one opens them until an outside laboratory takes custody. He stopped. The missing protected meals forced my staff to rebuild under pressure. Celeste continued. Then, the sealed replacements would return through the silver room. If anything happened, the kitchen would be blamed. Nico would be accused of breaking the peace. Lorenzo would ask the council to give him emergency control over every civilian door. Lorenzo laughed. Convenient. A cook becomes a strategist because she resents her title. Celeste looked at him. I do resent it. I resent writing the plans you presented under your name. I resent training workers you called replaceable. I resent reporting impossible deliveries and being told to go season the food. She placed both hands on the table. But resentment did not reverse that lion's tail. It did not shut down the foundry. It did not pay a company that never delivered one box. You did those things. Lorenzo pushed a folder toward the council. Inside were photographs of Celeste leaving the estate, entering the Halcyon Grand, and returning in the same car. She abandoned a protected event for another employer. He said, she carried evidence off the property. She had every reason to create a crisis that increased her value. Nico's jaw tightened, but Celeste answered before he could. Who ordered these photographs? Lorenzo did not respond. The hotel route was private. Nico agreed not to follow me. Sophia looked at Nico. I sent no one, he said. Celeste turned one image over. A service stamp appeared on the back. Bellandi Facilities. Camera 14. The camera is managed through procurement. Lorenzo's attorney looked down. You watched me leave while claiming my absence surprised you. Celeste said, you needed proof that I was gone before the false trays moved. It proves only that the estate maintained security. No. Security reports to Gabriel. This camera reported to your office. Lorenzo's calm finally broke. You think this room will choose kitchen staff over blood. This is not blood against staff. Celeste said, it is evidence against access. She turned to both families. You call us kitchen workers because it makes our labor sound small. But every person, every package, and every private plate entered this house through the system we maintained. Lorenzo used that system because he believed the people running it would never be allowed to explain it. The workers waited at the open doors. Celeste pushed the unsigned confession forms to the center. Are you removing the people who protected this dinner? Or the man who sold their access? Sophia raised her hand first. Void the statements. Protect every worker from retaliation. The Ventrescas followed. A Bellandi councilwoman raised her hand. Freeze procurement and every ghost vendor account. More hands followed. Lorenzo looked at Nico. Say something. Nico looked at Celeste. The decision is hers. Celeste turned to Gabriel. Revoke Lorenzo's credentials. Preserve every procurement record. No Bellandi relative enters that office without outside witnesses. Gabriel did not look to Nico for confirmation. Done. The light on Lorenzo's phone changed from green to red. 2 guards approached. You cannot strip my name from this house, Lorenzo said. Celeste held up the reversed tail seal one last time. Your name was how you opened the door. The proof is why it closes. The council vote was unanimous. As the guards took Lorenzo away, he twisted toward Nico. You canceled a treaty meeting because she said she was cooking for another man. Now you are giving her the family. Nico's answer was quiet. No. We are returning authority to the woman whose work kept it alive. When the doors closed, Sophia moved an empty chair from the wall and placed it at the table. Miss Harper, she said. Seat. We still have a treaty to finish, and no one here understands this system well enough to proceed without you. Celeste did not ask Nico for permission. She took the chair. The truce dinner resumed at 9:14. Celeste remained at the council table while Elena supervised a new service line. Every tray passed through one Bellandi witness and one Ventresca witness. The protected meals were rebuilt from sealed ingredients. Sophia's mother ate safely. And by midnight, both families had signed the treaty Lorenzo tried to destroy. No one applauded when the final page was signed. They were too aware of how close the evening had come to becoming a war. At dawn, outside council opened the procurement office. The old seal mold was found inside a locked cabinet behind Lorenzo's desk. False uniforms, blank staff cards, and pre-written statements blaming the kitchen were stored beside it. The ghost vendors led to holding companies Lorenzo controlled through intermediaries. His motive was no longer speculation. The joint audit, scheduled for that morning, would have exposed him. He had planned to create the crisis, break the treaty, blame civilian staff, and ask the council to hand him every door before anyone examined the payments. By noon, his accounts were frozen. His family vote was suspended. The evidence went to attorneys selected by both families, not to a Bellandi loyalist who could bury it. Celeste spent the morning with the 23 workers. Every accusation was removed from their files. Each received a written guarantee against retaliation. The staff members who had reported strange deliveries were named in the official record. Elena read her letter twice. "This is the first time they wrote down that we were right," she said. Celeste looked through the glass wall toward the council corridor. "Then make sure they never get to erase it again." Nico waited outside the temporary operations office until Celeste finished. He knocked on the open door. "May I come in?" She raised an eyebrow. "You own the building." That was not the question. "Come in." He carried no guards, flowers, or expensive apology. He set 2 folders on her desk. The first contained the official account of the breach. Celeste's name appeared on the first page as the person who identified the false shipment, preserved the proof, protected the workers, and prevented the treaty from collapsing. "You left your name out," she said. "I did not find the seal. You allowed the room to hear me. That is a low standard. I should have met it years ago." The second folder was thicker. Director of Civilian Supply and Estate Operations. Celeste read without speaking. The role-controlled vendor approval. Civilian staffing. Food and household deliveries. Service access. And independent audits. It carried a permanent council seat and the power to stop any order that placed workers or guests at unjustified risk. No single Bellandi, including Nico, could remove the director. A title after a crisis can be another way to buy silence, she said. That is why the authority comes first. I choose my staff. Yes. I can reject your preferred vendor. Yes. I can suspend one of your events. If the safety chain fails, I decide whether it failed. You document the reason, and the council reviews it. Until then, the event stops. She turned another page. Independent budget. Outside accountant. Quarterly audit. Jointly selected. And if I refuse the position, the workers keep every protection. Your name stays on the procedures you wrote. Chicago receives no interference from me or anyone acting for me. You would let me go. The muscle in his jaw moved. Yes. The answer hurt him. He did not use that pain to pressure her. Celeste closed the folder. Then hear my conditions. I'm listening. You do not enter my kitchen and call an order protection. You ask. Yes. You do not investigate who I meet. Yes. No guards without permission, unless there is an immediate threat I can see for myself. Agreed. If this becomes personal, my work does not become proof that I belong to you. Nico held her gaze. You do not belong to me. If I say no, the position remains yours. If I leave, the authority stays in place until the council appoints a qualified replacement under your procedure. She studied him for a long moment. Why did you cancel the treaty meeting? because you said you were cooking for another man. And I was jealous. Despite herself. Celeste laughed. I told myself he might be a threat. Nico continued. The truth was simpler. He recognized your value before I did. You noticed what I did for you. Yes. You did not notice what I did for everyone else. Yes. He did not soften the admission. I saw a plate waiting after midnight and thought you were kind. I saw the house continue without visible problems and thought the system was strong. I never asked whose labor made it look effortless. He looked toward the empty silver dome on a shelf behind her. When you left, the kitchen still functioned, but there was no last plate. I understood that I had treated your care as part of the building. Celeste's expression changed, but she did not rescue him from his guilt. I was wrong before Lorenzo betrayed us. He said, not only after I needed you. That was the apology. Specific, uncomfortable, unprotected by romance. Celeste placed the Bellandi offer beside the Halcyon contract. I'm flying to Chicago tomorrow morning. Nico went still. I'm meeting the board. I have not accepted either job. I understand. You will not call Adrian. No. You will not send anyone to the airport. No. You will not treat my return last night as a promise to stay. I won't. She watched him carefully. What are you asking me for? Nothing. The word surprised her. The position stands for 72 hours. He said, the apology stands whether you take it or not. I will not ask for dinner, forgiveness, or another chance, until you know you can refuse all three without consequence. Celeste picked up both contracts. The next morning, she boarded the Chicago flight alone. Nico did not send a car behind her. He did not call the hotel. He did not ask Luca to discover which room she had been given. For the first time since she had known him, his silence did not feel like neglect. It felt like respect. Celeste returned 3 days later with 14 pages of revisions. Nico met her in the council chamber. Not at the airport. He had not asked for her arrival time. She had sent it to Elena. And Elena had chosen to tell him only that Celeste would attend the afternoon meeting. I want paid certification for every civilian worker whose judgment affects safety. Celeste said, I want a whistleblower channel outside the family. I want emergency authority limited to 48 hours unless both councils approve an extension. Celeste continued, I want every procedure to carry the name of the person who built it. No department head gets to erase authorship and call it supervision. Nico looked at Lorenzo's old blue binder on the evidence table. Agreed. I choose my deputy. Agreed. I can resign without surveillance, retaliation, or any claim that my work belongs to the estate. Agreed. This gives one civilian extraordinary power. Celeste faced him. No. It records the power civilians were already using without protection. Sophia signed first. The others followed. Nico signed last. Then placed the pen in front of Celeste. The decision is yours. Miss Harper. She read the final page once more. Adrian's offer remained open. Chicago offered distance, prestige, and a clean beginning. Bellandi offered a harder future, rebuilding the system that had used her while sitting beside the man who had failed to see it. Neither choice was a cage. That was what made the decision real. Celeste signed. Director Harper. Sophia corrected. Only then did Celeste take the master access card, waiting beside the contract. Elena became deputy director. Marcus took control of receiving. Daniel led allergy and medical meal verification. Temporary workers received training before credentials. Not after a crisis. Vendors were paid only after a named employee confirmed that a real truck, real driver, and real shipment reached the estate. The first month was difficult. 3 family friends lost contracts. 2 captains complained that civilian review slowed them down. Nico's preferred wine supplier was suspended after sending an unapproved driver. Nico challenged the decision at council. The shipment was sealed. He said, "The driver was not cleared." Celeste replied, "He has delivered to my private residence for years. That is not the estate. The wine is for my table. The door is still mine to protect." The council upheld her suspension. Nico closed the file. Then, the vendor stays out. No coldness. No punishment. No private pressure after the meeting. That evening, Celeste found a replacement supplier list on her desk with a note in Nico's handwriting. "Your decision stands. Choose the one you trust." Respect did not arrive as a grand gesture. It became visible through repeated restraint. Nico knocked before entering the kitchen. He asked whether she wanted a guard when late meetings ended, and accepted no without argument. He stopped calling civilian problems household matters, and began asking which worker understood them best. When he needed Celeste's judgment, he requested time on her schedule instead of summoning her to his office. She noticed. He noticed smaller things too. A temporary chef reached for Celeste's carving knife during a charity dinner. Nico, standing across the room, said nothing. He looked at Celeste first. She handled it herself. "Later?" he asked. "Did I get that wrong?" "No. You wanted to decide." "Yes. I'm learning the difference between noticing a boundary and enforcing it for you." That answer stayed with her. Lorenzo's case moved outside the family. Faced with the mold, the ghost accounts, the false staff records, and testimony from his assistants, he accepted an agreement requiring restitution and cooperation against the holding companies. He lost every Bellandi title, every council vote, and permanent access to estate operations. His surname no longer opened a door. 6 months after the truce dinner, the estate completed its first clean audit. Every vendor existed. Every payment matched something physically received. Every civilian worker knew how to report a problem without asking permission from the department causing it. The results were announced at council. Sophia raised a glass to Celeste. Nico did not use the moment to claim closeness that did not yet exist. He congratulated the team, asked Elena to speak about training, and let Celeste present the numbers. Afterward, the estate emptied into evening. Celeste remained in her office reviewing one last report. At 9:30, she heard a knock on the kitchen door. Nico stood outside, carrying a silver dome. "May I come in? You look suspicious." "I cooked." "That confirms it." She let him enter. He placed the dome on the island and lifted it. 2 plates of pasta sat beneath it. The noodles were uneven, the sauce too thick, and the basil had been cut with the confidence of a man who had never been corrected by a vegetable. Celeste stared. "For 7 years. Nico said, "You left the last plate for me." He placed one dish before her and kept the other on his side of the island. "Tonight, I made one for you. You are free to eat it. Leave it or walk away." She picked up a fork and tasted the sauce. "Well, too much salt. I followed the recipe. You followed half of it. I was distracted. By another man. By the woman deciding whether to sit down. The answer warmed the space between them. But he did not move closer. Celeste set down the fork. "What are you asking, dinner?" "We are already eating. A real dinner. Somewhere. Public. Your choice. No security team at the next table. No background check on the owner. And if I say no, I eat both plates and regret the salt. And if I say yes, I ask before I hold your hand." She studied the man who once believed protection meant deciding for her. Now he stood on the opposite side of her kitchen island and waited. "I have another condition." "Name it." "You do not call my work beautiful when you mean convenient." "I won't." "You do not thank me for staying, as if staying belongs to you." "I won't." "And you do not turn jealousy into an emergency." His mouth almost curved. "That may require practice." "Then practice before Friday." Nico looked at her. Friday, Celeste extended her hand across the island. 7 o'clock. He did not take it until she nodded, when his fingers closed around hers. The last plate between them was no longer a service she had left behind. It was a choice they had made together. Friday evening. Nico arrived at the restaurant alone. No convoy waited at the curb. No men occupied the tables near the exits. Celeste noticed because she had spent 7 years noticing who entered a room and why. "You came without security," she said. "I came without visible security." She gave him a look. Nico raised both hands. "One driver. Outside. You approved him yesterday." "I did?" He held out the chair, then stopped before touching it. "May I?" Celeste nodded. Nico asked about Chicago. Celeste told him Adrian had offered 3 hotels and a restaurant carrying her name. She had refused because the Bellandi revisions let her protect the people whose expertise had been kept invisible. "Do you regret it?" "Not today. And tomorrow, I reserve the right." He accepted the answer. She asked whether he regretted removing Lorenzo. Nico looked down at his glass. "I regret that I gave blood more credibility than evidence for so long. I do not regret closing the door. He was your brother. He still is. Consequence does not change the relationship. It changes what the relationship is allowed to control." That was the kind of answer Celeste had learned to trust, not clean. Not sentimental, but accountable. Outside. They paused beneath the restaurant, awning. Nico's hand rested at his side. "May I hold yours?" "Yes." Their relationship grew without replacing Celeste's work. Some evenings they ate at her apartment. Nico learned to make eggs, soap, and pasta with a reasonable amount of salt. When he slipped, she corrected him. Once, after a threatening message reached the estate, he assigned 2 guards outside her office without asking. Celeste dismissed them. Nico arrived 10 minutes later. "There is a credible threat," he said. "Then explain it, and give me options." His first response rose in his face command. Urgency. Fear. He stopped himself. Someone connected to Lorenzo's holding company sent the message. Gabriel recommends a driver, a home alarm update, or an overnight guard. You can choose one. All or none. Celeste chose the driver for 3 days and the alarm update. She refused the guard. Nico accepted it. Protection became something offered, not imposed. At the 1-year anniversary of the truce, both families returned to the Bellandi estate. The same chandelier lit the council table, but the doors stood open, and civilian department heads sat inside from the beginning. Elena had a permanent chair. Marcus presented the receiving audit. Daniel explained the new allergy protocol. No one waited in the kitchen to learn what powerful people had decided about their work. Celeste entered in a deep plum suit. Nico Rose. A year earlier, he would have introduced her by her relationship to him. His chef. His employee. The woman under his protection. He did none of those things. This is Celeste Harper, he said, Director of Civilian Supply and Estate Operations. No vendor enters. No civilian worker is overruled. And no family order bypasses her review. He looked toward the department heads. The treaty survived because she understood the system we had trained ourselves not to see. Sofia Ventresca raised her glass. And because she returned when she was free to leave, Celeste took her seat. It was not beside Nico, because they were in love. It was beside him, because her vote carried equal weight on operations. That distinction made the love possible. The council approved a joint worker protection charter, drafted by Celeste and Elena. It guaranteed authorship, independent reporting, paid training, and the right to refuse unsafe orders without losing employment. The final vote was unanimous. After dinner, reporters gathered near the front hall. Rumors about Nico and Celeste had circulated for months, but neither had confirmed anything. A journalist called out, "Mr. Bellandi, is Director Harper also your partner Nico?" Turned to Celeste. He did not answer for her. She stepped toward the microphones. "Yes," she said, "by choice." Cameras flashed. Another reporter asked whether the relationship created a conflict with her authority. Celeste smiled. "His decisions remain subject to my department's review. He has already lost 3 votes." Laughter moved through the hall. Nico leaned toward the microphone. 4. You withdrew 1. Because you were right. Laughter. When the guests had gone, Celeste returned to the kitchen. The staff had cleaned the counters. 2 plates waited beneath a silver dome. Nico stood outside the doorway. "May I come in? You still have to ask." "I know." "Yes." He entered and lifted the dome. This time the pasta was evenly cut. The sauce had not split. The salt was almost correct. Celeste tasted it. "Well," he asked. "Improved." "High praise. Do not become arrogant. I learned from the best." She set down the fork and looked at him. "What did you learn?" Nico considered the question. "That care is not ownership. That loyalty is not proof someone has nowhere else to go. That a system can depend on a person while refusing to see her, and that saying, 'I love you,' means very little if I do not respect the life you can choose without me." Celeste felt the words settle somewhere deeper than the first jealous demand in the kitchen. "I do love you," he said, "but I am not asking you to stay. I know. I am asking whether I may keep building something with you." She walked around the island. "My work stays mine." "Yes." "My no stays final." "Yes." "My choice can change." "Yes." "And when you are jealous, I ask a question before canceling a treaty." She laughed. Nico held out his hand. "Palm open." Celeste looked at the last plate. The quiet kitchen. And the man who had finally learned that waiting was not weakness. Then she placed her hand in his. "I'm staying tonight," she said. Not forever, as a debt. Not because he had saved her. Not because the estate needed her. Tonight. Because she was free. Respected. And wanted. Nico closed his fingers gently around hers. Outside. The most feared house in the city continued to run, not through invisible sacrifice, but through named authority, shared responsibility, and doors that no family name could open without consent? Would you have returned to protect the people who ignored your warnings when a better life was already waiting for you?